Hey guys, welcome to 6 Minutes for Wednesday, July 6th. Today we are talking Team North Carolina as they head to Fargo next week. If you've watched any of the other ones, Alabama and Florida, you know that I'm going to begin with a basic overview, and then we'll jump into the actual team and kind of what to expect and who's going and all those sorts of things. But like the other ones, it's important to kind of give everyone some context. And if you've watched, you know that we'll go through the schedule and that sort of thing. And feel free to jump ahead because much of this information will be the same, and jump right to the preview. But yeah, let's make sure we cover that to make sure everybody understands the context as it relates to this. All right. So first and foremost, here's the schedule for release. And all of this information, like I said before, Alabama, Florida, today's North Carolina, tomorrow South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and then next week we actually get into talking about the division. So the 16U women, the 16U men, junior women, junior men previews, where we'll actually go into a lot more depth about who might be at each of the weight classes based upon the rosters that have been submitted to USA Wrestling, and what we can kind of look forward to. Now, I say who might be because there is always a big asterisk until somebody weighs in. We don't know if they'll move up, they'll move down. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but, it is possible that somebody doesn't make the trip or so on and so forth. So until they actually weigh in, we see the brackets on Flow Arena. This is a little bit of a guess about kind of what we might see come 2 weeks, week and a half from now. All right. So let's jump over to the schedule for Fargo, and things kick off Saturday, July 16th, with the 16U women in the morning and the 16U men in the afternoon. And then basically the way it works is the women go, a tournament starts, and then the following day or 2 days, depending on how big the brackets are, they have their medal matches pretty much right around 1:30 Fargo time. So if you can only tune in at one time a day over the course of these 6 days in Fargo, 1:30, 2 o'clock, depending on your where you're located, is probably the time to watch the best matches. Not necessarily the matches for Team North Carolina or the matches for Team Florida or whomever, but the best matches around. So as we look at the schedule, 16U women start Saturday morning. Sunday afternoon, again, about 1:30, 2 o'clock, we'll see those women's medal matches. That morning, Sunday morning, the junior freestyle men will start, and they will continue wrestling. And you see down on Tuesday, July 19th, that afternoon is when they will wrap up. Monday's afternoon's medal matches in the afternoon. Go to 16U freestyle, and so on and so forth. So that's a basic idea of who's wrestling at what points in time, and when you can tune in to kind of catch different divisions competing. All right, so why Fargo? Well, I get asked this a lot of times, and what happens is we get a lot of kids go to Fargo. But again, it's a very small percentage of those that actually compete in high school and so on and so forth. Fargo is basically our USA Wrestling National Championship for this age group, and for 16Us, also known as cadets, and for the juniors, so high school aged. And if you look at this graphic these numbers were brought to you by Jason Bryant and his Fargo Almanac. And by the way, if you haven't looked at the almanac, haven't gone and picked one up and that sort of thing, it is full of tons of information, like 194 pages worth of statistics and names and past champions and so on and so forth. It's just a ton of information, well worth it. You pay once, and then every year he produces a new one that kind of just updates the old one. And all you have to do is follow the link and get it downloaded again. So totally worth it. I would totally recommend it. So why Fargo? Well, if you're interested in wrestling in college, this is the place to be. I mean, the truth is, if you walk around the floor in Fargo and you want to wrestle Division One. Now, NAIA, Division Three, Division Two, those coaches are there. They're watching this as well. But when you look at the percentage of wrestlers that have competed and then made an NCAA Division One spot, an All-American spot. So as you can see from here, 79% of the place winners, the All-American spots since 2006, they competed at Fargo. 79% of them competed at Fargo sometime during their high school years. 78.2% of NCAA Division I champions since 1994 placed at 16Us or junior nationals. Same thing true for the women. That's what we see with the 85.1% and the 70%. So you don't want to compete at Division I in college in wrestling. Fargo is probably not something that you're necessarily paying much attention to. Totally good. Most wrestlers aren't going to move on from high school and wrestle in college anyway. But if that is a goal, if that's something that you are paying attention to, this is certainly the way to get on the radar screen for the college coaches, particularly those college coaches at Division I schools. Here's a look real quick at the numbers as we've seen. And this hopefully will provide a little bit of context for why Fargo is, in terms of numbers, such a competitive tournament. And this is only the numbers. We're not even going to talk about the quality, which we'll get to next week when we start talking about some of these weight classes and who is coming back and their accolades and so on and so forth. Strictly by the numbers. As you can see, Greco, 16Us and juniors, freestyle, 16Us and juniors, women, 16Us and juniors, from 2021, 2019, and 2018. In total, there were almost 6,000 entrants last year competing in Fargo. All right? What that means is, let's take a look at that junior freestyle group. Almost 1,600 wrestlers in junior freestyle. That means that there were over 106 an average in each bracket in junior freestyle. If you were a 100 pound, 106 pound, 285 pound junior, yours might be a little bit smaller than that. But if you are a junior 132, 138, 145, brackets are huge. I mean, we're talking 150, 160 wrestlers in a bracket. We don't see that a whole heck of a lot. And then the level of competition is something else, and we'll get to that later. But again, if you get an opportunity, you're interested in the numbers, you're interested in this type of information, it is all within the Fargo Almanac provided by Jason Bryant. Make sure you go check that out. All right, so today we are here to talk about North Carolina and Team North Carolina. Really excited about it, but let's jump into it. And we'll start with the 16U women. And the reason we start with the 16U women is because they are first up. They're first up in the on Saturday morning. And as you can see here, not a whole lot of history. North Carolina in the 16U women division has only had 3 All-Americans. Layla Mezar, Heaven Fitch, and last year, Haley Misplay. Haley Misplay came in, I believe it was 132. She finished 8th, made the podium. Fantastic accomplishment. North Carolina has had no champions in 16U. So, yeah, a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of a struggle as far as making the podium and that sort of thing. And the question you have to ask yourself is, will that change for this year? And as you can see from the roster, Leah Edwards, Kylie Brigman, Kennedy Brantley, Maggie Milbury, and Anisette Cooper are the 5. Now, there's something to be said first and foremost, and that is North Carolina is bringing more 16U women this year than they brought last year. Okay, so that is fantastic. one challenge, and just to be really, transparent about it, is that I believe Anisette Cooper is the only wrestler who competed at junior national duels. Now, she's a 16U, so it wasn't necessary for a cadet to go and compete at junior national duels, but it kind of gives us an idea of where they stand relative to the competition. All right, and getting an understanding of kind of where you stand, going into Fargo. It will be a struggle for North Carolina to make the podium, for a girl 16U from North Carolina to make the podium. But last year, if you were to ask me, out of the two that went, Reagan Riddick and Haley Misplay, I probably would have picked that Reagan was going to make the podium. And Haley came through and wrestled her butt off to make the top 8. So nothing to say that any of these 5 can't do the same sort of thing and make a run for the spot on the podium as well. All right, 16U men. As you see here, 16U men, there have been 23 freestyle All-Americans. Last champ was a little while ago, Ty Reynolds back in 1996, but they did have an All-American a year ago with Jax Forrest, who took 4th last year. Now, Jax isn't on the team this year. I don't know if he'd represent North Carolina or Pennsylvania, but I believe that Jax isn't listed in Pennsylvania either. I believe he's probably gearing up and getting ready to go to Worlds and compete there. So best of luck to him. But I'm sure Team North Carolina will miss you and would love to have you in a North Carolina singlet competing for them in Fargo. As far as Greco goes, there have been 16 Greco All-Americans, no champs. And like you see here, Jax Forrest, again, was the last person to make the podium, which was last year. Last finalist that Team North Carolina had in Greco was Richard Traynor back in 2018. So what's the likelihood that North Carolina, a 16U man from North Carolina, is going to make the podium or make a run for the podium? Well, I think it's probably pretty good. Here is our roster. And, the truth is, the first person that stands out on that roster is Cam Stinson of Mallard Creek. Cam is a superb wrestler. The only challenge I think that Cam, it might be really interesting to see how Cam does in Fargo, is that he wasn't on the Fargo dual or on the cadet dual roster. So we haven't seen him compete against the other 113s in terms of freestyle and Greco, some of the top 113s. But, we watched him in NHSCAs. We've watched him in lots of other places. Tons of success. He is definitely the person that, for me, I'm paying the most attention to. I think he has the best shot of making the podium. Charleston Baglio is another one. I think he has a real shot to make the podium as well. But again, Charleston, just like Cameron, we didn't see him in cadet duels, which I think is a real good indication of kind of what we might see, how they'll perform in Fargo. All right, so as you look down further, there are a lot of kids that competed in the 16U cadet duels that aren't on this list. Trevquan Gary, Cameron Curva, some names that we might have expected who wrestled well at cadet duels aren't on the list. So it'll be kind of a little uncertain as to be honest with you, when we go into the 16U's men to see how they compete. Stinson and Baglio are definitely two that I'm paying the closest attention to. We'll get into their brackets, potential brackets, next week, and we talk a little bit more detail and they're the best shots. And there might be a couple others on that I'll make mention of because their brackets maybe afford them an opportunity to make a run as well. But those are the two that you should definitely pay attention to as we move forward. All right, junior women. And this is our junior women history. There has only been one junior woman from North Carolina who has made the podium, and that is Heaven Fitch. She was fifth at 100 pounds in 2019. Obviously, with only one All-American, they haven't had any champs, and they haven't had a ton of success lately in even pushing to get to the podium. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that North Carolina doesn't have an opportunity come this time around. And the reason I bring that up is these five, Elizabeth Elliott, Trinity Howard, Kenley Riley, Kaylee Sudreth, and Ella Beam, are on the list as far as being on the roster to head to Fargo. Now, Ella Beam is been training, going to Presbyterian. I believe it was Presbyterian, Ella. Sorry if I got that wrong. Been training a lot, gearing up for Fargo. She went last year. She competed in Fargo a year ago. She went 1-2, lost a 16-15 match that really would have put her in a much better position to make a run for the podium. But if she's been growing by leaps and bounds, I think that she definitely is the name to watch as we move to Fargo and get ready for those brackets. Wouldn't surprise me to see Kaylee Sudreth go out there and compete really hard as well. And then, junior women, as I talked about with the other and the other Team Florida and Team Alabama and so on and so forth, these are not easy brackets. And you'll see next week, each of the weight classes have maybe 18 of the top 20 girls in the country competing. I don't think any of the North Carolina girls are currently ranked. Ella might be ranked, but I don't think anybody else is ranked. So if the rankings are any indication, Team North Carolina is going to have to go out there and work and pull a few quote unquote upsets to make the podium at junior women. All right, let's move to junior men, and this is, in my opinion, and I don't think I would get much pushback from people who know Fargo and everything else, by far the most difficult division in Fargo. And Team North Carolina, unlike a year ago where they brought a small number to Fargo, this year they're bringing a crew. And there's a lot of names on this list that should be really exciting to watch. But before we get to that, let's jump to the history of North Carolina for junior men. There have been 26 freestyle All-Americans. Mike Wallace at 285 in 1985 was, I think, the only champion for Team North Carolina. And the last All-American you can see there was back in 2013, Casey Hutchinson, who was fourth. In Greco, they've had 19 All-Americans. James Short, I believe, won a Greco title in 1994 at 178. And their most recent All-Americans for junior men was Christian Decatur-Luker and Richard Traynor, who did so in 2019. I think that changes this year. And the reason I think that changes this year is because this roster is a really good roster of, one, very talented wrestlers, and two, wrestlers who, several of them, who have gone and competed at junior duels. They were in Fargo a year ago. They wrestle a lot, and I think that they have a real shot to make an impact. Now, again, context and trying to set some expectations. Junior men, I mean, let's take a look. Jeremiah Price is one of the top wrestlers, not only in North Carolina, but in the country. I think he's probably ranked in the top 20 in the country at his weight. Okay, but he resides at 138/145 in junior men. That bracket will probably have about 160 wrestlers in the bracket. And we're not talking about 160 wrestlers in the bracket that aren't at that level. Now they may not be top 20 in the country, but there will be 8 to 10 that are just have as many accolades as Jeremiah Price does. And I mean, that means that, and they only award the top 8. So it's going to get tough, even for that level of competition, even for that quality, because I think Jeremiah Price on this list, he and Carson Floyd are your 2 best chances to make the podium in Fargo. Carson has finished his senior year at Lake Norman. I think he's heading to App State. He has wrestled everywhere. He's gone everywhere. He's competed against everyone. And he wrestled a year ago in Fargo. He knows what it's like. He's been there. He's done it. I think he wrestled Junior 220 a year ago. He's now Junior 285. It will be really interesting. I think he and Jeremiah really have the best shot. A couple other names, and I don't want to read everybody's name off this list because that's just going to take way too long. But Savoy New. Now, I haven't seen Savoy New wrestle much since the high school season, but he also was in Fargo a year ago. And that can only help as we head to these brackets and what to expect. Keep an eye on Tyler Tracy and Logan Fight and Ethan Shell and Hunter Gundry. And again, I could go on and on and on. A lot of different names, a lot of different opportunities. There are several within this group who can really make a run, but junior men is a difficult division. And check out this 6 Minutes next week on Thursday when we get into some detail about junior men. You can see kind of how maybe Tyler Tracy stacks up against some of the others according to rankings and according to past kind of accolades as it relates to Fargo. You might get a really good sense of, his opportunity to make a run and make that top 8. So anyway, I want to wish Team North Carolina the best of luck. I love the fact that the junior men are super deep. We've got several good in the 16U men that are going to give a real run, I think, for making the podium. Junior women and 16U women have more than they've had before, but I think it's only Ella Beam that comes back with some Fargo experience. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond to the 28, 30 mats that are all over the Fargo Dome floor. So anyway, best of luck to you all. Safe travels, and can't wait to see you guys perform in Fargo in a week and a half.